So, hello everyone on the coolest stage, the dev stage, right? At Spryker EXCITE. So, as it was already said, we want to talk about the symbiosis of UX, headless frontend, and Spryker. And I brought with me Jannik Egger, who is the head of the frontend department at diva-e. Unfortunately, our partner, the head of the UX department, is not here today. He wasn't able to make it. So Jannik would take over his part. So just a few words on introduction. We have been doing headless front-end implementations, not just for Spryker, but also for Spryker for quite a long time. And what we want to do today is to share some experiences with you. So how do we do the UX part? Why do we do it? What are our decisions and insights on the front-end side? And in the last part, and that will be my part, we'll share some experiences on how this works out actually in Spryker projects. I'm Volker Boehlke. I'm the head of the Spryker delivery department at diva-e. And as I said, you'll see and hear more from me later. So Jannik, stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Volker, for introducing me. So nice to have you all here, as you said, on the best stage today. And we would like to talk about seamless user experience. And I guess a common misunderstanding of user experience is that user experience starts as soon as a user is using your website or an application. And that's not true, because user experience starts really while setting up a digital project. And it doesn't matter if you're going to launch a new e-commerce platform or an app. It's really doesn't matter. In the past, we saw the usage of design system in general, and I guess a lot of you are familiar with using design systems. And what we see as a huge success is the usage of headless design systems. And the basic idea of headless design systems is that you separate logic from visual representation. And that's kind of sounds ugly at the first stage, because what are you talking about? Logic in visual representation. And yeah, there is logic in visual representation, or could be. And just one question to the audience. Who's doing web projects for, let's say, more than 10 years? Okay. Who of you had a Photoshop file passed through for doing a converting it to HTML and CSS? Yeah, painful, right? So, this is where we came from. So basically, I started developing front-end applications 17 years ago, so quite a long time, but that was common sense. My designer gave me a PSD file, and it was pain in the and a huge potential of failing, huge time invest, and then at the end the result wasn't exactly that what the designer wants. So this is where it came from. Then we had the switch to, of course, Sketch, XD, and Figma and stuff like that. So this also was a huge improvement. And nowadays, or since multiple years, 2 years or so, we're going with headless design systems. And the basic fundamental unit of headless design systems are so-called design tokens. And you can think about a design token as, for example, a font definition or a background color, spacing, grid systems, and all that kind of stuff. And those are stored in the design system in the core, and all designs are related to those definitions. And that's great, because we do have a huge consistency throughout the whole team. And speaking about multiple teams working at the same time on the same design system. And you can imagine one team doing the work on the e-commerce platform, the second team is doing the mobile application, and the third team, for example, retail in-store screens. But they would like to use all the same design tokens. And consistency is key here. And as I made the examples, scalability and maintainability is a huge thing. And it basically came out of the box with design tokens, so awesome. And collaboration, multiple teams, same design system, great results. awesome. So we do get a lot of benefits, and adaptability and reusability are just the one you get for free, you could say. So headless design systems with design tokens are a really, really great thing. So far, the theory. How does it look? So this is no mistake. It could look like a ugly rendered image, but I try to represent a headless component. So this is basically what we have as a headless component defined within a headless design system. So I try to make or showcase a button where you can add an icon, and you have like an outline around it, and without design tokens, it's like the ugliest thing you can imagine of. And with design tokens, like background colors, icons, spacings, margin paddings, you imagine it or you name it. And combining those two things, you actually get a usable and interactable component for your website, for your iOS application, or for an Android application. And just by combining different design tokens to the headless component. And that's a really, really great thing. And it doesn't stop there, because just having it in a headless design system, yeah, it's just a definition, you can say. But you go with headless design systems, and you integrate a process, a pipeline, an automated pipeline from the designer to the development team. And that's awesome, because you get all these definitions and all these settings just by kind of a translator. I try to call it translator just to make it simple. But at the end, it's exactly what the design system or the design system is doing. So you have the design tokens, core components, stuff like that. You push it into a translator, and you can define how you would like to get the output for the web application, for the iOS native Swift application, or yeah, whatever you can imagine. Yeah, and the great thing is also for systems you maybe do not have in mind yet. So a lot of the tools here are which are staying in between are flexible, so you can extend them and add your own export definitions, and that's a great thing. And yeah, we do, of course, front-end implementation. My team's doing front-end implementation, and we're really lucky that we do have an UX department who are dealing with so cool innovations. And in the past couple of years, we do not only have the innovation of headless design systems, we had facing the rise of headless projects approaches in general. So I guess it was 2019, as we had a hackathon in Munich with the whole company, and there we started our first headless front-end, it was kind of only a front-end project, but there we started our first headless project, and since then, I guess there's a mistake in the chart, because the chart should be like going still upwards. But at the end, it's kind of the innovation we are facing. So I guess if we're looking to large enterprise e-com projects, kind of nobody is doing it on the old monolithic architecture approach. And the approach of headless projects are we're facing changes if we're talking about that. Just curious, who's doing headless front-end projects in general? Oh, okay, yeah. So maybe after the talk, a bit more of you would like to go with that. Yeah, cool. But before we dive into the front-end part a bit deeper, we are facing some requirements if we're looking to the architecture and the platform itself. So I guess the topic of multi-channel capabilities is kind of self-speaking, but we also do have a huge topic about scalability and performance. And if I'm talking about scalability, I do not think about a huge amount of users visiting your website, you increase memory, and you solve the problem. It's more about extending the architecture. So you're facing the issue that you would like to add a new search engine, or you would like to add an identity provider or payment provider. And then you need the flexibility to extend the architecture. So that is key. And best would be to have an ecosystem within the tooling and the platform you're using with bullet-proven extensions against enterprise projects. And yeah, if you're familiar with headless projects, I guess you all know how important it is to have an headless API first approach. I guess I need to get something to drink. My voice is dying. Ah, yeah. That's awesome. Thank you. I'm sorry for that. I guess it's okay. And much better. And one thing, I guess I'm speaking for all of you, is the topic about developer experience. So you have to make it possible to have the best developer experience as possible, because I think without happy developers, your project will fail. I'm 100% sure this is the case. And Volker already said it, in the past years, we did a lot of projects with Spryker, and also with an headless approach. And you basically can add tick marks to all of those requirements, and that's a great thing. Now facing some requirements specifically for the front-end part. I had the topic of performance, scalability in the previous slide. And now I do have the topic of sending the data, the front end, blazingly fast to every endpoint you can imagine is key to success for front-end, headless front-end applications. I guess in the opening talk, we heard it also. We are in a world of uncertainties. The world is changing, requirements are changing, and therefore the team, the architecture, and the tooling needs to be responsive. Responsive to new and unknown circumstances, to new requirements, and the headless front-end application approach ensures that. Of course, because of the architecture, but also that you are able to decouple processes within the project teams. So you can decouple the front-end process quite well from the back-end process, and that's a great thing. Volker, you will talk about that in your section of the presentation. I'm so sorry for losing my voice. It's a bit ugly, but I try to do my best. And I had the API first thingy, the slide previous as well, but in this time, I mean being able to have one data endpoint and be able to send those informations to different kind of visible endpoints is unbelievable cool. Because in the past couple of years, you had you're preventing your data, or you make sure your data is ready for your website, and specifically for one endpoint, and that's kind of really limiting. So you're not able to easily make it possible that your product detail information are visible within a retail info screen or so. It was limited to your website. And being able to do so is key for successing headless front-end applications. And of course, to have just that one endpoint, it's really easy to add a security layer here as well. So how do we solve those requirements at diva-e? Basically, I try to bring with me a kind of simplified version of architectures which are kind of common for us. And one thing we tried to integrate in our project as kind of a standard, as a blueprint, you can name it, is the so-called diva-e TXP stack. And it's an headless approach, a headless front-end setup, where you get like the installation, of course, you get quality ensuring toolings, you get AWS deployment, and all that nasty stuff you have to make on every project setup is kind of out of the box. And in that case, also, main goal was to ensure a high developer experience. And the TXP stack, you can configure in multiple configurations. And one cool thing is it doesn't end in the front-end layer. So you can configure the diva-e TXP stack to get a whole accelerator out of it. So that you get kind of the whole punch through to all technical layers directly, for example, to Spryker or the content management system, identity provider, search, or whatever you can imagine. And that's really a rocket start for your projects without any hustle. And usually the developers can then focus on the cool things in a project. So that's a good thing, and we really enjoy it. I guess like in the headless world, more than 90% of our projects rely on that, and yeah, with huge success. I guess the one or the other saw there was written next within the in the architectural image. So let's talk first about decision making. Why we are going with that tech stack and maybe not another, or maybe we do. But technical decision making is like a religious war, you can say, because the one likes Vue, the other likes React, and so there's a lot of discussions going on. But I try to, at this little piece here, we at diva-e usually making decisions for our clients. So the client comes always first. And that's also related to the technology stack. So a lot of reasons why we talk with our clients a lot and then decide together which tech stack we are using. And most of the time, if we're speaking about the European market, that's important. We are facing Vue and Next in our projects. Also speaking about the European market, next come React and Next. And sometimes we are using Angular or web components in general. And I guess, Volker, you also will showcase usage of Angular. So the flexibility we're having with the diva-e TXP stack, yeah, it will get presented in a second. And I try to bring with me kind of the default configuration of our diva-e TXP stack. I already said it. Really in the default configuration, it's coming with Vue, Vite, Next, Storyblock, and some white label components. And those white label components directly connect to the headless design system. So you can get a kind of already pre-styled front end just by setting up the diva-e TXP stack with a headless design system. So that's a great start, a rocket start for the projects. Of course, we have some toolings for quality insurance built within, and as you saw, the possibility to add different kind of content providers quite easily. And of course, all the things you need in between. And the really cool thing is it doesn't end here. So you can configure while setting up the project, for example, the technology. So you can say, exactly, right? No, you can say Vue and Next is not useful for us in the project of one of our clients, for example. So let's go with Angular. Okay, fine, tick mark on that. Or you can say maybe we need a search engine or PIM or whatever, and you just can configure it and get the basic punch through within the project, and that's awesome. And I guess now how we're doing it in practice, in real-life projects, will be showcased by Volker.
Yeah, so I have to speed up a little bit in time. So spell with Spryker. That's it? No, I think that's too short. So I promised to show a few cases here, and that's what I will do, and provide some insights, especially on the experiences we made when connecting to headless front-end approaches in our Spryker projects. So case one is actually the one that you referenced just now, where we had Angular on the front-end side, and of course Spryker on the back-end side. And as you might guess, it is the straightforward approach. Yeah, the connection to the back-end to Spryker was done via the Glue API. Yeah, there was just some small component on the front-end side that did some data mapping just to map the Glue endpoint data to exactly the format that they wanted to use to show tables, whatever, on the front-end side. So this was the only thing they did, and it works quite well. If you have been around for quite a while with Spryker using the Glue API in these contexts, I can say that it has increased quite a lot. It's not just there for quite a few years, but it has been developed and it has been increased in speed, especially in certain pages, in certain parts. So that's a positive experience we made with recent projects. So like 2 years ago started, or 1 year ago started, that there has been quite an increase there. So it's straightforward here, and something you might need to consider when thinking about the architecture is where you run these things. For Spryker, it's obvious, yeah, it's the PaaS environment, and for example, in this project, we choose to use it in Europe. And the front-end part was run in AWS, different, same cloud provider, same location. Guess what? Latency wasn't an issue. Yeah, so that's something to consider, but it's not really a problem. What was more interesting is, okay, there's no latency issues and no real problems on the performance side for Glue. So what else did you guys, which kinds of problems did you guys face, and what did you have to solve? So actually, the common topics that you have in Spryker project, and I think every web project in that sense, that of course you have to look into all those things where you do database queries below, but that's not something that is special to the connection to a headless front-end system. So no problems here, it's just the usual stuff that you have to deal with. I specifically asked the developers, and yes, they did some small optimizations and put small logics into the front-end side, something you could discuss if that makes sense or not, but it was more convenience because they said, okay, I can sum up certain things myself before doing a call to Spryker or whatever. It was not really because it was a performance problem. So that was quite good news from our side and quite good results. What was more interesting is the development process. So that was actually also in case 2, that will be the case that this is the more interesting part. So how do I organize my work here? Yeah? How do I connect these two teams? How do I interface between backend and frontend? And that was the more challenging and interesting part. In this project, they actually decided to use the existing Glue endpoints and just extend them slightly. Yeah, it was just the best match for them, and it worked. Yeah, it worked quite well. They used the out-of-the-box functionality in Spryker for Swagger documentation and just shared it with the front-end team. So they are in a different Git environment, and they just got the Swagger during each phase. At each time a commit was done, the Swagger was updated, and there was some influence on that. It was just exported to them so that they can use the most recent version even on dev. In dev environments without looking something up or talking to people. They could just use it. Another point was that they found very helpful was to propagate error messages through the different levels. So if you talk to third-party systems, for example, so you see it below here, they actually used MuleSoft to connect to a lot of other systems. There are sometimes or might be errors, like to use a certain service, you have to put an address, and this address should be complete, like there should be a house number or whatever, or a street in there. And for the rapid prototyping approach they did in the project, it was really helpful for the front-end team that these kinds of error messages, there's something missing, were propagated through the different levels through Spryker to the front-end side so that they get a meaningful error message on what happened. There's not just an error, but I can change this. This is a certain invest of time, but it certainly speeds up development, yeah, because I don't have to check back with the back-end team, then check back with the developers for this third-party service to really know what happened here, yeah. So that's something where they really looked into. And I also asked them, so what about versioning? What do you guys do to make these things connect? And they said, it's not really an issue for us. Yeah, we are so fast in developing on both ends that we just deploy the same version or at the same time roughly, and it just works. And if something doesn't really work, okay, we can fix it quite fast. So that's not really an issue for them to have like an interface contract that is versioned or something like that. They didn't need it. Yeah, so that was the interesting insight here. And I think that's the straightforward approach, and it just works, as I said. The second part is, I think, a little bit more interesting. It's using a more recent front-end stack, yeah, in Vue Next, so I think it's your favorite, right? And it's not going the direct way via the Glue API, but there's MuleSoft in between, yeah? So that was interesting from my perspective, because now there's someone in between, and also we are running in cloud environments that are at the same location, yeah, all in Europe. It's different cloud providers, so does it work? Yes, there were no problems, yeah? So it just worked out of the box. That was nice. And also there was MuleSoft in between. Yeah, it was no real issue. Also there are some processing being done there. Performance really wasn't an issue. The interesting parts again came when we talked about their development process. And they made some different decisions here for good reasons, I think. So for example, they decided to not use the default Glue endpoints in their project, yeah, but decided to go and create their own ones. They were certainly inspired by what was already there, but why did they go that way? They said, okay, we just want to concentrate on the interface I want to build. I can do that quite fast with Spryker, it just works, yeah. I can look what's already there and reuse it somehow if I need it, but I can build it quite fast. And that's what they wanted to do on the front-end side. Yeah, just wanted to concentrate on the interfaces they wanted to consume, and on the Spryker side also just providing the information that they needed for a certain use case, yeah, for the certain task at hand during their sprint. So that was a decision they made, and they got quite far with that. It just worked out. Yeah. Mocking, if you talk about versioning and testing and stuff like this, was done on the MuleSoft level and worked quite well. So that was their approach on being fast in providing first data from the backend level to the usually a little bit faster front-end developers, yeah, in certain parts. So that was their solution, and it just worked, yeah. And another part is that they had long talks about interface specifications at first, yeah, in the whole team. Yeah, so the front-end developers, the MuleSoft developers, and the back-end developers. And then they later decided that's not really needed. Okay, we have our sprint planning to get a general goal on what the ticket means, what's the business value, and so on. But these interface specifications, we just talk about that between the front-end people and the MuleSoft team, or between the Spryker team and the MuleSoft team. But we don't need to talk directly because yes, the same data flows, but it's not really a problem. Yeah, we can just concentrate on that part and keep the meetings smaller. I think that's what developers like, right? Not 10 people, 12 people discussing things, just 2 or 3, and it worked quite fast. And in an iterative approach, so if there's an error, yeah, they can just fix it, they just talk about it and solve it, so that was quite easy. So summing things up, since I see we don't have much time left, Spryker really performs well in headless scenarios. It's not just talk, it's not just marketing, that's our experience, it just works well. Yeah, you should keep latency in mind if you go into international setups, yeah, from the US or whatever. Yes, there might be issues, but that's something we know, it's not the fault of Spryker, just have it in your mind when you plan your architecture. The Glue API just works fine. I know that there are sometimes small things that you have to check in the echo models, for example, where not everything is available. So check that and fix it, but you can do that quite fast. Yeah, it's again the Spryker philosophy. I can touch these things and change it quite fast. Yeah, and the success factor really is the contracting between the different parties and keeping that in an efficient way. You also have 30 seconds. for your...
Wow, yeah, I guess summarizing is quite easy. So what we're facing is a huge paradigm shift in the development process itself. You already talked about it, and I guess it's also a seamless process in general, so that's a great thing. I guess all headless projects are future-proof, so you get really an flexible architecture, flexible project for your future. And one bullet point, which is most important for myself and my team, is developer experience, and this is great with headless projects.
So there's no time for questions, sorry, but we will be open for questions anyway. So there's this big diva-e booth down there. You hear the booming sounds sometimes, yeah. Just visit us there. You can talk to me, you can talk to Jannik, or get in touch through every other way if you're interested in learning a bit more about the details. Yeah. So thanks a lot for your attention.